Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about the handpicked topics that I selected from chapter 15, which is inventory management. So in this video, I'm going to basically describe why keeping inventory is one of the key fundamental business that is being conducted in both service and manufacturing industries, and certain aspects of inventory, including inventory costs and further reasons that companies keep inventories in their system. So let's get started. I took this picture online, and then I wanted to give you a perspective on what a traditional warehouse might look like. If you're a person first time seeing a warehouse, this is a very typical one. So what you see here is might be just bunch of boxes, like you don't know what's inside of these boxes, but you see that the warehouse is almost full. You see some even some inventory is laying on the floor. Maybe they are getting ready to be shipped to their destinations. And there are some here on the shelves waiting upstairs and downstairs. It looks pretty full to me. There are huge cranes to be used to move things around. There are some forklifts here on the ground. If you look at this picture from this perspective, it might just seem boring. But if you know that the inventory is actual money, cash, um, flying around in your warehouse, then this picture doesn't really look that boring, right? So one of the key things that you should know is inventory is listed as one of the key assets on balance sheets. So you literally want you literally would want these boxes to be turned into cash, like you see here, as soon as possible. That's one of the key measures that we are going to be using in this course. It's going to be called inventory turnover ratio. So the higher is the better for that ratio. And many operations managers, supply chain managers are obsessed with that ratio, how to make it higher and higher and higher. Because if you keep your inventory turnover ratio high, it means that your speed converting these boxes into real cash value is much faster, right? So that's what I want you to have this perspective, thinking that every inventory is a potential source of a cash, would motivate you to turn those inventories into final products. Okay, so this is the perspective that we should all have. So if you really would like to get rid of inventory, then why would someone keep inventory in their system? Well, of course, there are some unexpected events. So there are some spikes and downgrades in your demands, maybe, right? You want to be prepared for those, especially for those demand spike moments, so that you can fulfill the needs of your customers. So that's why you might want to just keep extra inventory in your system. I just mentioned that you might just need to keep extra inventory in your system, because what if you're importing goods from China, and there's a Chinese holiday usually typically lasts like 6 weeks, and then they don't manufacture anything. So you want to make sure that you order your goods before the Chinese holiday hits, so that you will be ready for the production for the next 6 months. And what happens if something else, maybe a natural disaster is going on in some portion of the country where your suppliers are? If that happens too, like, you want to be ready for your production schedule. You don't want to disrupt your production schedule. That's why you order more from your suppliers and you keep them in inventory. Sometimes when you order inventory, your suppliers might just say, hey, instead of ordering 100, why don't you just order like 500? I will give you a discount. So that's called economies of scale. And if that's the case, you tend to order more and then keep them in inventory. Of course, there's a trade-off between holding cost and keeping less inventory in your system. But most of the time, economies of scale is a factor to keep inventory. If there is going to be a forecasted increase in the price of your raw material or the stuff that you purchase from your suppliers, you want to just purchase them early so that you wouldn't really pay for the upcoming increased costs. That's one of the reasons that you keep inventory in your system. Sales increases, we just basically mentioned that, but seasonal, due to the seasonal demand increases, it's also another key point that that might force you to keep inventory in your system. If you're the ice cream maker, for example, before the summer hits, you want to just maybe increase your milk inventories or some other like flavor inventories in your system. Reducing transportation costs and transit times. It is very expensive these days to ship goods from one location to another. It is getting cheaper and cheaper, but it depends on many other factors. So instead of like shipping one unit, let's say from overseas versus 1,000 units, the per shipping cost is going to be much much lower if you ship bigger quantities, right? That is the logic that makes you order more so that your transportation cost per unit can go down. That might be another reason that that is forcing you to keep inventory. And so looking at production fluctuations, so sometimes your setup time or your the setup cost to prepare your manufacturing plant ready for the next production batch might be a little bit expensive. So you want to just say, okay, since I am doing this work, why don't I just produce instead of 100 units to 500 units so that I can be ready for my next production run. So there might be many other reasons to keep in inventory. So these are just some of the basic ones. So what are the types of inventories that companies keep in their system? So primarily we categorize inventory into two: finished inventory and unfinished inventory. So it's pretty simple. You can call them by their names, the categories by their names. So if it is a finished inventory, it means that it is ready to be sold. And if it is unfinished, it means that you really have to do some further work on it to turn those unfinished good inventories into finished goods. Some examples for unfinished inventory is your raw materials, right? Or your working process inventories. Maintenance, repair, and operations. So those could be like finished or unfinished inventories. So it's in a gray area. But the finished good inventories would be just an example for a finished inventory. Imagine a car factory. For car factory, you have steel you're importing from your supplier. You do have tires, maybe importing from your supplier. Those go into raw materials inventory. Work in process inventory might be transmission. When you put transmission into your engine or engine into the transmission, that assembly would be called as a work in process inventory. And the finished goods would be just the final cars, right, that you have in your system. Maintenance, repair, and operation. So sometimes you keep some materials or extra services ready in your plant, just to, for example, provide the maintenance for your machine breakdowns, or um, any certain, like maintenance equipments that you keep so that you can get the machines ready for their operation. So those are supplemental inventories, but of course you still have to keep them in inventory. That's why we have this category. um, what are some basic inventory costs? Well, first of all, you have to purchase them, right? So you have to spend some money to purchase them. And while you are investigating those inventories, for example, picking up the phone and then calling someone about potential like codes, right? So that really costs time for your personnel and then resources that you spend for investigating the best material out there or service out there. So simply purchasing costs, the money that you pay to purchase those inventories, and also ordering costs are two fundamental costs. Setup costs are minor compared to purchasing costs and ordering costs, but they are there. Holding and carry or carrying costs. So those are also another fundamental cost category. Um, that goes into your inventory cost calculations. So why do we have holding costs? Well, you just saw that depot, right? So inventories, they occupy a lot of spaces. So not just space costs. So you have inventory in your system, you would like to protect them. So you might have insurance costs. And as the inventory rates in your system, they depreciate by time. So you have to consider the depreciation cost. And in some states, apply taxes on inventories. Remember, inventories are your assets, so you might just want to consider paying taxes. And interest costs on the money invested in inventory is also another factor that you should take into account. So when you first looked at that boring warehouse, knowing everything else that I just mentioned right after that, makes that warehouse, boring warehouse, not that boring. There are a lot of factors going into inventory planning. And then you should be aware of all these different features. So chapter 15 does a great job explaining what those features are. And stock out costs can be listed under inventory costs, because if you don't really have enough inventory in your system, you will be stocking out when another customer comes in to seek for units from you, and you don't have them ready in your system. That means that you are stocked out, right? So and then maybe that customer goes somewhere else, that will be a lost sales cost. If the customer just accepts to wait for you so that you can get them in stock and then sell it to that customer, that means that is the back order cost. That's going to be coming up next. I just explained what this slide tells you. Lost sales happen when you lose the customer goes somewhere else, and you have a lost sale basically. There's a huge opportunity cost with the lost sales. The back order cost is your customer agrees to wait for you, but customer is going to lose faith in you, and then you might just cut them some space. You might just reduce the price because your customer is waiting for you, right? That will be going under the back order cost. So if you played the beer supply chain game with us, you would already know what these costs mean. But if you haven't played it, don't worry. We are going to play in week 7 one more time, and you will have a pretty good understanding of what backordered cost, loss sales cost, and holding cost is in that game too. Okay, so next video is going to be about inventory turnover ratio and how we calculate it.